In a world of podcasts, one rises in the night to destroy them all. The elder god in an ocean of noise, the Cthulhu of the airwaves. This is Spoiler Country.
All right, guys, welcome back. I'm Kenric, which you already know, and today on the show, we're super excited because if you're a Conan fan like I did, he wrote some classics. He's, of course, done a ton of Marvel and a lot of independents, and you probably already know him just by seeing his smiling face there. Jim Zub, thanks for coming on, man.
Thank you for having me.
So today I've been working, like we were pre-talking. I was telling you about my
pre-chatter
issues. Yeah.
If the interview just snaps closed at some point, it's probably a technical issue. It'll just come up the little colored bars, and we apologize for this interruption. It'll
zap.
That's right.
Dude, I watched your TED Talk today with Dungeons and Dragons.
Nice. Thanks.
I got to know, how did you prepare for that? Because
I did a TED Talk in 2019. It was actually one of the most difficult sort of public presentations I've ever done. So I'm a teacher. I teach up at Seneca College here in Toronto.
Nice.
So I'm used to being in front of people. Public speaking has not been a problem for me for a long, long time. I go to comic conventions. I do panels. I whatever, YouTube videos, interviews like this. It's not really an issue. Right. But there was something very different about doing a TED Talk. There's, first of all, the grandiosity of it. You're just like, oh, it's a TED Talk. And then on top of that, this idea that you have to say something deep and meaningful and important. And so I had around 5 months, I guess, to prepare that talk. Mm-hmm. And it was terrible for the first 4 months of preparation. Like, I over prepared and I over memorized. And
you in the mirror, like totally talking to yourself, or
you just present it for other people, and it becomes robotic. Like you just, and so I had it drilled down to a point where I had it memorized, but it was kind of soulless. And then my wife is amazing and really good about being really honest with me. And so I had done a rehearsal of it, and she was like, all the things you're saying have value and I've heard you even tell some of these anecdotes before, but you've just stripped all the kind of emotion out of it, and you've just turned it into this cold, hard thing. Yeah. Stop looking at the script, stop memorizing, like just speak like yourself. Because in the classroom, that's when you're at your best. When you're at panels, that's when you're at your best, is just still saying something valuable, but not necessarily, sanding off all the rough spots. Like
you wanted the barroom discussion of your time.
Right. She wasn't aware of everything that was going to go in there. It was like, I was running certain parts of it past. And the minute that I kind of put the script away and just sort of internalized, okay, this part of the talk, we're talking about these sorts of things, because there is a PowerPoint presentation that goes with it. Right. So as long as I had that as an overall guide, like, here's what I need to cover, I was fine, and it all kind of worked. And then, so that last 3 weeks or so, it all kind of finally pulled together. And that's when I started to feel good about it. And I went to the venue the day before, and actually they're putting, like the day before, they're getting all the lighting set up and all the sound systems and all this. There's no one there except for a few technicians and the people in charge. And they gave people the option, if you're around, you can come early. So I showed up early, and I just got up on stage, and I was like, oh, okay, this is what it'll feel like. These are the acoustics. This is what we need to do. And in the morning, you're going in and you're getting prepped. You grab a cup of coffee and all this stuff. So even just knowing how the building was laid out and where I was going to kind of park, like, it sounds dumb, but it just meant the next day I could show up, know exactly where I was supposed to go, what I was going to do, and just get into that zone, get up there and bust it out.
I would do the exact same thing.
Yeah. And so the minute that it was interesting, because I wanted to go in the morning, and on the original schedule, I was set to go in the middle of the afternoon. And I thought, oh, people are going to be burned out and exhausted. And the crowd, as excited as they want to be, they're just getting bombarded with information.
Right.
I don't want to go first, but I want to go sort of middle of the morning.
Right.
And that day while I was at the venue, they had one of their speakers drop out and they said, do you want to take the spot? It's the middle of the morning. And I was like, yes, I do. And so it was great because I went second. So the first person basically has to get the crowd warmed up and going. And I thought, okay, great. Then I stepped up, did mine. And the minute it was over, you walk backstage and you feel like, okay, I'm done. Pressure's off. And I saw someone else come in the door and they were like a nervous wreck. And they're like, I don't know where to go, what to do. And I'm like, let me show you. And I just sort of like kind of took them around. Okay, here's what you're going to do. And here's how it works.
I loved you.
Yeah. Because at that point I was like, well, the tough part's done. I'm finished. Like all I got to do now is just hang back and watch a couple more talks and have lunch and then leave. Right. So it was good. It was sort of the ideal circumstance based on how it all went.
Yeah. Would you do another one?
So this is a really weird thing to sort of say. If you do a TED Talk and it goes over well, you get a lot of offers to do that same speech elsewhere. And I haven't done it again. Like, I don't want it to turn into a weird, overly rehearsed, here's the emotional part where I say something poignant. Like, it's not really why I did it or what I want to do.
Sure.
But some of those speakers, they kind of end up going on tour for sorts, like doing that same speech at conferences and stuff. And that's not really of interest to me. Like, that's not, But
if they ask you to do another topic.
Yeah, maybe. Like I said, at least I know kind of what it entails. But it was one of the more intimidating things I've worked on, as anything. Yeah. I think the difference is that as a writer, I'm used to creating fictional stories and coming up with characters. And here it's like, let me tell you about my life. Right. And that's a very different kind of, even when so on my website, I have a lot of,
find this interesting.
Yeah, but I have a lot of tutorials and how to write comics and how I broke in, but those are all functional in the sense of like, here's something you can learn about breaking in, or here's something you can learn about pitching your stories, or here's a mistake I made, don't make that mistake.
Right.
Rather than it being like, here's this like holistic whole of ideas and concepts and what I think is important in my life. Like it was a really fascinating experience, and strange and good. Obviously it was a positive and I'm glad I did it, but man, the stress leading up to it was unlike almost anything else I've done.
How were you approached for that? Or they just came?
They came to me. So what'll happen is, they're regional, right? So the TEDx is all being organized by different independent people, and so they'll sort of throw a net out regionally in terms of people they're interested in.
Yeah,
and because I think I had done. It must have been because if I recall, I had done a bunch of Canadian press around when I was writing Champions. We created a new Indigenous superhero for the Marvel's team of young heroes. Yeah. And so I ended up doing like multiple radio shows in Canada. I did the national news multiple times and I did newspaper stuff. So for like 3 weeks, it was pretty intense and my face showed up all over Canadian news. And I think the guy organizing it saw one of those and was like, oh, this guy's neat. And I think he assumed I was going to talk about superheroes and stuff.
Right.
But he came to me and said, would you like to do a TED Talk? And I said, I'm interested. And I said, what do you want me to talk about? And he was like, no, that's not how it works. You propose it to us. Right. And so I think he assumed I was going to talk about Marvel stuff. And then I ended up coming back to him and saying, I want to talk about, Dungeons and Dragons and role-playing games. And he was like, cool, like that works for us, like whatever you're passionate about, that you think you've got something cool to say. And so that just, set the pace at that point.
Do you think, did Dungeons and Dragons build the blocks for your fictional writing?
Absolutely. Yeah. I say this everywhere. Like, I would not be a writer today without Dungeons and Dragons, without tabletop role-playing games, because it was on multiple levels, right? Like, first off, it was the feedback loop of entertaining a group of people and having them respond in real time.
Yeah.
And so telling those stories and creating those characters and making them laugh and smile and be entertained was like, incredible. Like, I'd never had that kind of direct feedback, right? And this wasn't just regular, people my age. This was my older brother and cousins. And when you're younger, you
Yeah, I have an older.
Yeah, you want to impress them, right?
Yep.
And I could do that with a sly idea or a funny voice or a cool, joke in the moment. And so that was really, really addictive to me and got me thinking about, character and story and all those kinds of things. But your ability to improvise, your ability to take the ingredients of what's going on around you in the game and come up with something innovative or interesting or entertaining. That's what I'm doing all the time now. Like my job now is to create these stories and not just impose my voice on the characters, but find out who those characters are and find their voice and bring it out. Right.
Kind of goes into your teaching as well, right? Because
big time.
Entertain. And there's a lot of entertainment that goes into
there is,
interact.
Some of the, when I went to college, I had some amazing instructors and I had some terrible instructors. Yeah. And the terrible instructors were not unskilled.
Right.
They just were really bad at communicating the ideas. Yeah. Right. Or engaging, the classroom or reading the classroom when they were losing the, attention, right? Not realizing that no one gave a damn because they were just grinding it into the ground or whatever. They weren't able to switch gears. They weren't able to, mentor, or they had one solution to every problem. And if you didn't meet that criteria of that solution, they had nothing they could offer you.
Right.
And teaching is about mentoring and it's about communication and it's about engagement. And so my best lectures are the ones where I can give it a personal anecdotal element, because if I just tell you core kind of theory, it may or may not stick. But if I show you examples or I give you a little bit of an emotional story, not emotional sometimes, but not always, but like a story to go with it, that helps it stick. It gives it gravity in your mind, And so
like roughing up roughing up the wall before you paint.
Yeah. It's just something, right?
Yeah.
So, I will, when we talk about story structure in one of my classes, rather than starting into here's how most stories are structured, I tell them an anecdote. I tell them about how I proposed to my wife. And it's a funny story. It's like, it is like a bad romantic comedy. and it really happened. And I'm telling them this story and it engages them. And they're like shocked for me and embarrassed. And oh my God, they know it works out in the end and yet it's still entertaining. And at the end of it, I'm like, okay, you're probably wondering why I just told you this little 15-minute ditty.
Yeah.
Now we're going to break down that story. And just because it's a real thing that happened doesn't mean I'm not telling it to you in a specific way that activates story structure. And then we start writing it on the board and breaking it down and reminding them why certain things happened in certain orders and how we were setting up drama and where we were paying it off. And just because it's a real event doesn't mean that it's not being effectively presented. Do you know what I mean? And you can do it really badly.
Right.
I'll talk to people and they'll tell me a story and it drives me nuts because they're really bad at it. And I can tell there's like an actually pretty good story in the middle of it, but they're just not practiced at this stuff. So they'll get midway through the story and then they'll be, oh yeah, I have to tell you something or it won't make sense. And then they'll rewind back and then they'll throw in more information or they'll tell you the big punchline and you're like, I don't get it. Oh, right. No, it's because the guy, and you're like, oh my God, it doesn't work. Like,
is that way? When someone's trying to, have you seen pitches that way?
Of course, and people, mistaking, people will come up to me at conventions or whatever, and they'll say, oh, I'm working on my own stories or whatever. And I'm like, cool, that's great.
Aren't we all?
And they're like, can I tell you about it? And, it's that weird duality of, sure, but do you want to do this? Like run the gauntlet? Like, I'm not here to be critical, but you are on the spot, like, here we go. And a lot of times people will mistake plot for pitch, right? And a pitch and a plot is two different things. Like if I tell you blow by blow the events of something that happened, that may or may not be entertaining, but that's not necessarily the information that you need in order to pitch something. What you need is broader thematic ideas, and you need sort of an overview of this is why this is going to work and how it's going to entertain. Right. And if anything, you leave a bunch of stuff out because A, we don't have time for it. And B, the editor, the publisher, the whatever movie people you're pitching it to, they need to sort of mentally fill in the blank and go, oh yeah, I see the potential in that. Tell me more.
Right.
Rather than you exhaustively sort of, barraging them with all the crap that they don't have time or interest in until you've engaged them. Right.
Yeah.
And so it's just, and it's not even that these are bad stories. It's just badly organized, badly communicated, all this kind of stuff. And it's stuff you learn, hopefully, not the hard way. of getting rejected.
The hard way though makes it stick because
like
they got to fail to learn, and I think that's what people are so scared to do nowadays.
Yeah, and some people, and it's not even a lack of hard work, right? It's like working smart. People will. I don't critique stories very much because I don't have time because I'm really busy. But every so often, one of my students would say to me, "Hey, can I show you this story?" or something like that. And they put a lot of effort into it. So it's not about effort. I think people mistake this thing like, well, if you work hard, you're like, yes, that is important, but you can be working really hard in the wrong direction, or you can be working really hard on the stuff that's not going to actually get you where you want to go.
Right.
And there's hard work spent.
Right.
But it's the end result is not going to be commensurate to the time spent, right? Sending someone a 50-page document is not effective. Like if you say, send me the pitch, you send me a 50-page document. I'm like, great, I can tell you worked hard. I'm not reading 50 pages. Like I just have send me the 2-page version. And they're like, oh, what? Like, yeah, it doesn't matter how cool, how amazing, how detailed you think your thing is. You have to be able to summarize. You have to be able to, get it down to this really fine, razor sharp point.
Yeah.
And intrigue me enough that I want to see the 50-page document, that I can't wait to see the 50-page document because I can see all the potential in the core concept,
Yeah. Yeah. When you talk with Marvel or Dark Horse or Image or any of the things, is there a difference in the way you approach it based on who the company is?
Yeah, I mean, it's editor based, honestly. Yeah. So it's rather than it being the publisher, it's more about the editor, right? Like
Tom will be completely different.
Exactly. And I have a relationship with Tom. I've been working with him since 2016. And so I would talk to Tom very differently than I would a new editor I've never worked with before. Because
you had Tom on and I was talking to him, and I couldn't crack him. You know what I mean?
No.
Couldn't get it. Then
he's seen everything.
Then I brought up Star Blazers, and we
yes, Tom loves it, man. Yeah, man, Tom's great. So Tom and I both love Star Blazers, Space Battleship Yamato, man. Like old school Japanese animation.
Yeah,
my brother and I grew up watching G-Force and watching Yamato, right? And
I would miss the bus because Star Blazers was on at 7 a.m. Okay, on Channel 11.
So good
in Seattle, Washington, and I lived in Bremerton. Anyways. I'd wake up at 6:55. I'd run downstairs. I'd click on the TV. I had to pull the thing out, and I literally had to change it to channel.
Oh yeah, that's how it worked.
Sit down and then mess with the antenna to make sure I got it. And then it'd come in, and I'd have
the big logo just comes at you.
And the song, everything about it, man.
One of my best memories. So I've been to Japan a lot. And I was out with a bunch of the Capcom executive crew because when I was at the Udon studio, we were doing a lot of work with Capcom. We go out for karaoke one night, and in and amongst all the songs, they bring up the Yamato theme song, which is the exact same cadence as the as Star Blazers. So they're singing the Japanese one, and I'm screaming the English one simultaneously. And everyone's just looking at us like we're insane, but we were having the best time and we're bonding over it. And they're like, "Oh, they didn't know they used the same music in English." And I was like, So it was amazing. So in the English one, when they say "Our Star Blazers," and it's Yamato like that in the Japanese one, right? It's so good, man. Anyways, we had a lot of fun. Tom and I have commiserated over Star Blazers stuff multiple times. And one of the trips I came back, I bought him a model, one of the Argo, and I brought it back, the Yamato, and he put it in his office and stuff. So it's cool. It's nice. We've got a good bond going. He's been really, to bat for me multiple times at Marvel and all kinds of cool projects. But getting back to your original point, Tom and I've got a relationship where I can just sort of say to him, "Hey, I think this is cool. What, tell me what you think." And he gives me a real, unvarnished answer, like yes or no, or here's why, or I need more information. And at first that abruptness, I think, really threw me, where I was like, oh, he doesn't like me at all. And it's like, no, he's just not going to waste your time. Like he's just going to tell you this doesn't work for me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, but like, and Tom actually gave me one of the best pieces of advice I've ever gotten from an editor. And treated me like a real professional and an adult. And I know that sounds corny, but like some editors can be like, it's almost like they're acting like your babysitter, and some of them are like hard asses, and I just want to be treated like a pro, right? You know,
right.
And Tom just said, I can be convinced of things. I'm like, what do you mean by that? And he goes, well, I've been here at Marvel currently longer than any other editor.
Yeah.
I know my way around these characters and these properties very well.
Yeah.
But you're being brought here to write on these things, to bring your own qualities and ideas to the table. But you have to convince me this is the right direction to go. So if a pitch is not successful, figure out why, and then, convince me of this is the right way to go.
Yeah.
Because it's not about him letting me have a title. It's about me coming in with the best concept or the coolest, way, approach or whatever.
Yeah.
And there's been times where I pitch an idea at Tom and he's like, I can tell you're really passionate about this, but I'm not convinced this is the right direction. And I'm like, that wasn't actually no. That was go back, get your supporting argument, come back to the court case and slam the book down and let's friggin' do this, right? Like, so, there's been multiple times where I've in Champions, we did a 3-part Weird World story because I'm sword and sorcery guy. I'm known for Dungeons and Dragons, now Conan, but at the time just D&D stuff. And I was like, I want the Champions to go on this fantasy adventure. And he's like, I know why you want to do it because you love fantasy stuff. Why do you think I want to read it? Like, why just you wanting to do it is not a good enough reason. And I was like, okay, here's what it exemplifies about these characters. And here's what's really cool. And the kids are into D&D now. So I think it actually speaks to these kids as teenagers and all this kind of stuff. And then the assistant editor was like, Jim's right. Kids are crazy about D&D again. It's a thing.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, I didn't even know that. And I'm like, yeah. And he goes, all right, I'm convinced. And it's like, great. That was what it took, right? Was, us being able to prove to him that this was a viable path beyond just me being a goobery D&D fanboy, like this is going to be fun and cool. And we've got a direction. The ultimate example of that was in Champions number 24, I did an issue about gun violence in America.
Yeah.
And that was a lot to ask, that's a lightning rod, obviously. Yeah. And I was like, look, at the time, we were the only book at Marvel that was a team of teenagers. I said, this is a current thing. Stan he did a drug issue of Spider-Man. There have been issues about everything from AIDS to drug use to, diseases and cancer and all this stuff in the Marvel universe over the years. And I said, this is a viable topic.
Yeah.
And this is the right book to do it in.
Right.
And Tom goes, this will be very hard to go because it's got to go all the way up the ladder. Like this will go all the way to Disney to get approved. But if you feel that strongly about it, I'm open to hearing the pitch. So I went and over a weekend, I sat down and really kind of soul searched on it and put together a pitch. And then he sent me notes and he's like, here are the barriers. Here are the problems we're going to have. I cannot guarantee this pitch goes any further, but if I feel strongly enough that I can defend it, then I'll take it to the next level, up to C.B. Cebulski and beyond, right? And we got it refined to a point where I was super proud of it and he was super proud of it. And we got it through the upper echelons. And like that issue, we were drawing the issue and Tom sent me multiple times emails where he was like, just so you know, this issue could still get the kibosh. Everyone will get paid, but it just might never get released.
Right.
You have to be okay with that. And I was like, I am. And then it got solicited. And, there's a part of you like, well, it's got to happen now. No, they could still yank it. Like corporate could get cold feet at any point, right?
Right.
It wasn't until I saw photos of it on the shelves at comic book stores, I was like, well, they can't stop it now. Like it's,
it's there today.
Right. It's literally on the stand.
It's funny because Marvel has, DC too, but Marvel has always taken a chance with social commentary.
Yeah, they've done, I think, more of it, in the grand scheme of things. And they ended up releasing a collection of stories called World Outside Your Window. And that is the newest story that's in there. It's got the Spider-Man drug issue. It's got the Hulk AIDS issue. It's got a bunch of those stories in there. Yeah. And then mine was the last one in there because it was the newest. And I'm really proud of that. I'm really glad that we were able to do it. And Tom's the kind of editor who he's not worried he's going to lose his job for fighting for an important thing,
Right.
And so he was the right guy. It was the right time to do it. But it was,
he knows the buttons to push and then not to push.
But I've tried to explain this to some of my friends and some of the people I know who are getting their start at the big two. And I'm like, you build up creative credit with these editors and with the publisher, and every so often you cash it in. You know what I mean? Like, and some people, I think they spend before they've got enough, and they find out very quickly they're not going to be able to cash out what they want. Right? They ask, they put too big an ask in too soon.
Yeah.
And it's like, you do not, if you're Donny Cates, you're building up credit pretty fast.
Right.
You can ask for a lot, right?
Right.
I can't ask for the stuff that Donnie would, obviously. I can't ask for the stuff that Dan Slott would,
Right.
But if I gauge properly and I figure out where I'm at, then I'm like, yeah, that's not unreasonable to inquire about or to talk about, or let's see what's possible. And the nice thing is when you've got an editor like Tom, who, again, he'll just give you the unvarnished truth. Yeah. So I've asked about characters and books and things, and he'll just be like, that is not worth pursuing right now. Like, that is not going to happen. And it's like, okay, like, cool. I'd rather hear that than nothing. The worst thing is when you sling something past someone and you get no response, and months later you'll see that editor at a convention and you're like, and they immediately apologize to you because they know they blanked you on it.
Right.
And you're like, all you had to do was just send me a polite, no. Right. The worst thing is when you just like run away. Like, that's like, come on.
When they run away, do you think some of it is just they just don't understand?
I just think they're tired and they don't want to deal with it, because a lot of freelancers don't deal with rejection well, or they'll just keep squeezing, because they got an answer. They're like, well, what if we did it like this? No. Like, just take the no and move on. You know what I mean? Like,
there might be another editor out there that'll say yes.
Well, this is the thing, and you'll notice this whenever an editor changes offices, a flurry of messages will go out because they're like, now's my chance. All the old pitches, everyone blows the dust off, and they're like, remember that old thing they said, no, we're doing it now. And they just, and I've been guilty of it. Like, I've definitely, someone changes offices and I'm like, I still think that thing is cool. I'm going for it.
Yeah.
So you can't, it's fine.
I have a thing that I'm working on now, but I think I'm going to do Kickstarter.
Yeah,
it goes that way, and then
but like Image is a different kind of a beast, right? So Image is not about, if you're at Image Central, then it's Eric Stevenson is the publisher, and he's going to greenlight the book. And Eric is amazing in the sense that you'll just get an answer, and if you've done an Image book before, that's pretty much all you need is, yep, okay, we'll do it, and then you're like, all right, go, let's get the solicit going and do the thing, right? Because it's going to be, an Image book is going to be the way you want it to be generally, as long as you're not losing them money. Like, if I say, hey, I'm doing a 100-issue series, they're like, yeah, no, let's do 10 and see how it goes, but if you get the green light over there, it's more about like, all right, like, get to work, like, do the thing, show me that this is going to function, rather than it being a matter of, all right, give me a deadline. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because Image is so creator front focused. It's about you setting up the schedule. It's about you making it a priority.
Right. Do you like working with Image more than?
I do. I mean, Image, not more. It's just different. Yeah. Like, having limits is valuable creatively sometimes. So, for example, when I was doing Samurai Jack over at IDW, I loved working on that book. Andy Soriano, the artist I worked with on it, he was one of the designers of the original cartoon. He could draw anything in that style and make it look amazing and fun and crazy. And we would just come up with cool ideas and kind of write the hell out of it. Yeah. But having
amazing company,
someone like Andy on there where he knows the characters in the world, and he would say, this fits, this doesn't. It helps you. When I'm doing the Conan series, and Conan Properties sends us these nice notes where they're like, usually approving what I'm doing, but sometimes just asking questions, like, just want to make sure, where's this going? And it's like, oh, remember in the outline, we're going to do this and this. Oh, okay, great. Or sometimes like, I think we need to stress that part of the character more. Or we need more. The Hyborian Age is more like this rather than that. And you're like, oh, it is good to get those reminders. It is important to get those, that feedback. And on a creator-owned book, you have to create those limits. Like, you have to say, this fits the series, this doesn't, this is working, this is not. And sometimes you're not always a good judge of that. Sometimes you can get off in the weeds and just be like, doing your own thing, your own way. And you're like, I could really use another pair of eyeballs on this, because I'm sort of we're just doing it, like, and Image doesn't necessarily have that kind of system in place because that's not how they're built.
They don't have limits.
I mean, they don't have limits. If you're going to, I'll give you an example. So my first creator-owned book at Image was Skull Kickers.
Right.
And in 34, thank you. Yeah. 34 issues, I got one note back from Image about content. And it was because on the front cover, we were going to have a character giving the middle finger.
Nice.
And they said, right now the book is 12 plus in our rating schedule. If he's giving the finger, it's 18 plus.
Yeah.
And I was like, really? And they said, yep, in some states and in some countries, that's a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah.
We can change the rating on the book, but is it worth doing it for this cover? And I was like, no. And then they said, you should change the cover. So they never said you can't do it.
Right.
They just said, here's the results of what you're doing.
That's great mentorship though, right there. That's
right.
You can do this. These consequences you might have to.
Exactly. Whereas, Marvel would say, hey, guess what? We don't do the middle finger because that's not how we roll. And it's totally valid because the superheroes don't do that. Right. Like, and so, of course, Marvel editorial can tell me, hey, surprise, Captain America wouldn't do that or whatever.
Right. And
I totally, of course, you got it. I'll change it. Or I have to convince you he would or whatever. Whereas on the Image book, it was, you can do whatever you want. Just here are the implications of that.
Yeah, I like that though. I like that. Telling you can do this. And it makes sense because Marvel is completely different.
Sure. I mean, it's a corporate system.
Everything's different.
Intellectual property and, it's all that other stuff, right?
So with Marvel, because I think you might appreciate it. My favorite Spider-Man story ever is Craven's Last Hunt.
Oh, I think incredible.
It's amazing. The only thing that drives me nuts is I feel like writers don't take that into account today because it's 30 years later. But I feel like Peter Parker needs to be claustrophobic.
Right.
If it's in the timeline after that, and he, of the age that he's already divorced and all that kind of stuff, he should be claustrophobic because that was a harrowing experience.
But, one of the difficult things with characters who have huge long-running continuities is you're constantly having to cherry pick what matters right now and what pieces, as much as like Spider-Man fights Doc Ock. Well, Spider-Man's fought Doc Ock 50, 60 times, right? So we can't have them blow by blow go, well, the last 20 times we fought, it's been like this.
Right.
What you need to do is sort of have this overview and you kind of gloss over the fact that, yes, the characters all had bell bottoms in that old storyline and it was in the 60s, 70s, whatever. But what's really important is Doc Ock married Aunt May or was trying to marry Aunt May. And we're going to harken back to that story because we've got a new twist on a Doc Ock thing with Aunt May. Yeah. So, we all just wink and nod and go, sure, there's been
nudge, wink, wink, you're good.
10 presidents in between all that and 100 years of continuity. But what's really important is back in the day, Doc Ock tried to marry Aunt May, and we're going to reference that. You know what I mean? Or like, and so it's like this. I think the weirdest example of that was when Bendis and Stuart Immonen, they did New X-Men, and they brought the original X-Men from the past into the present.
Right.
And you're like, they're all dressed and acting like they're from the 60s. But this is supposed to be taking place now. And current Cyclops is in his 30s or early 40s. And you're like, this makes no sense. But we all just accept it because we know the original comics came out in the 60s. So he should look like he's in the 60s and everything should look like the 60s.
Right.
And now is now.
That was now. That was the.
And another weird one was when Dan Slott last year did Iron Man 2020. And it's like, I don't know if you read this. There was a character, Iron Man 2020, in the 80s. And it was like 35 years from now, there's a futuristic Iron Man who's coming to the present, the 80s.
Right.
And he's terrifying. It's like, well, we're there now. We're in 2020. So Dan is referencing the 80s story, but it's also now because it's 2020 now.
Right.
And it's like this, it's a pretty deft move in a cute kind of continuity hop. And it kind of works. And I thought it was fun and neat. And it's like, we all have to just simultaneously accept that in the 80s, Peter Parker and Tony Stark fought Iron Man of 2020. And now in 2020, that character is not a distant relation of Tony Stark's. He's a current relation of Tony Stark's because it's now, right? And you're like, whoa, like the mental math is wild, right?
Yeah,
like you just, okay, it works. Like it just has to, So
Jim, you have a series that just came out. Well, it didn't just come out, but
in trade paperback, it just came out from Dark Horse.
For Stone Star.
Yeah.
You can give us like an elevator pitch.
Sure, I'll give you the quick pitch right here on the spot. I better do a good job at it. I'm getting all cocky where I was like, then they don't do a good job explaining their story and all this stuff. And you're like, well, let's see what you got there, pal. So Stone Star is it's a space fantasy series.
Yeah.
And the core of it is around the space station called Stone Star, which is a mixture of almost like a gladiatorial arena meets a traveling circus on a galactic scale. So it is this space station that is a gladiatorial arena that entertains people. Yeah. But instead of it being in one place and people come to it, it's a space station. So it travels to other planets and it entertains people wherever it lands. But with it, it brings all sorts of intrigue, right? Like it's not just the surface level and the spectacle of the entertainment, but it's all the machinations and the controversies and the mysteries underneath. Like, so you've got this thing where it's a space fantasy series. It's a coming of age story because our main character is this young kid named Dale, who's an orphan on the station and trying to decide if he wants to get into the gladiatorial arena. And then you also have that kind of sports manga kind of approach where there's this competitive element of these characters fighting and trying to earn their way in this structured system. Yeah. And it's all those things coming together. And then you add in the intrigue of the planet that they're on and all the things that are happening. So in the first storyline, for example, there's the actual planet is on the cusp of civil war. So if a war breaks out, these guys have got to pull up, roots and get the hell out. So there's all sorts of these different cool, fun elements we get to play with. And I kind of built this sandbox for Max Dunbar. He's my co-creator and artist on the series. Yeah. Max is a phenomenal designer. And he's a real world builder. He's the kind of guy who loves to draw places. He loves to draw characters. He loves to come up with things. And so I gave him this sandbox where I could go, look, there's aliens and there's creatures and there's robots and whatever other cool, crazy crap you can think of. And if you come up with it, I'll put a name to it and we'll put it in the arena, or we'll make it, in the little town, or we'll make it an alien race. If you think it's visually cool and I think it's visually cool, it's in there. Yeah. And so that was just our kind of unhinging his creativity to go wild on the series. And then I had certain characters and the way their plot would run out. But then once he designed them, it really, now they were solidified. Like I could imagine them interacting, or what is the personality and what is the voice? Whereas previous to that, it was just like kind of plot widgets. Like, okay, the orphan kid and their best friend. Well, what do they look like? Oh, and then, the member of the royal family on this planet that they're on who's running away. And then you've got the old mentor figure. Like, what does that look like? If Max had drawn the mentor figure, like some sort of monastic, old and wise kind of master, then I would have given him a very different personality. But he drew this character who looked like grizzled alien Clint Eastwood, and I was like, all right, he's a cantankerous bastard who's seen too much and forgotten more than you'll ever know, and he'll tell you that, right. And so the minute we had those visuals, it just gave me the ability to put some emotional heft to it and figure out the voices of the character with Max. Yeah, it was a ton of fun to work on. Comicsology was great. So it's part of the Comicsology Originals program. And so we released it digitally in 2019. In 2020, we actually did a second story arc that's available digitally now. And then now in 2021, we got the print version of the first arc from Dark Horse. They did a beautiful job on the book. It looks amazing. Max's stuff looks so good. And our colorist, Espen Grunde here, and he's a colorist I knew from Udon, and he is one of the best in the industry. He's like this untapped talent. I actually brought him in at Marvel. He colored the Empire Avengers miniseries
nice.
I did last year.
Yeah.
And the artist on that, Carlos Magno, is phenomenal, but that guy is like a detail machine.
Right.
And most colorists, he just kind of bulldozes them. Like he's got so much dense line work that most colorists are like, I don't know what to color. Like there's too much stuff on the page. And Espen's the best. He can just like break it all down. And they were a beautiful, amazing team together. I just love seeing what they're doing. That same team, Carlos and Espen, they're now doing that upcoming Kang miniseries that's coming out. Oh, cool. Yeah. And it's just going to be a stunner. I've seen artwork for it. It's just next level.
That'd be beautiful.
Those guys are great. So Espen's amazing. He gets along amazing with Max. Max just sort of, took it to the limit, and the book looks so good. Stone Star looks just so good. Oh, nice. We're super proud of it. And pumped to have it in stores and have people reading it.
Did Comicsology approach Dark Horse for you, or did Dark Horse come to you?
So Dark Horse had signed sort of like an all-around deal for those Comicsology originals.
Oh, cool.
And so they're doing these staggered releases of a bunch of the most popular Comicsology originals now in print.
Yeah.
So we're one of a whole series of books that they're putting out.
Yeah. We just had Drew Zucker and Phil Stevie on for the house.
Oh, nice. It's good. Phil's great. He's awesome. Yeah. So good. But the Comicsology Originals was great. Like Chip Mosier, the guy who runs their Originals program, I had met him at a couple conventions back in the day, but the first time we really talked about was hilariously on a trip to Japan. I was in Japan and he was there acquiring a bunch of manga at a comic festival. I was there promoting Wayward and a bunch of stuff, which is an Image series that I did that's set in Japan. Yeah. And we went out for
That's funny. I didn't know that was you. I have that.
Oh, yeah.
In my collection. I got like the first 8.
Oh man, I'm super proud of that book. You got to read it. We did 30 issues.
I know I read up to 8, and then I moved, and then you know what I mean.
Yeah. No, you got to. That one I'm super proud of.
That was really good.
I'm proud of almost all my books, but really
good. Yeah.
Thanks, man. Yeah. So Chip and I had a great conversation while a bunch of us were out for dinner, and he was basically like, "Hey, I'm doing this program of originals and creator-owned stuff at Comicsology. I know you do your creator-owned at Image. Would you consider doing your stuff anywhere else?" And I basically said no. I said no. Image, takes good care of me, and I like what I'm doing over there, and I know the contract, and I know the system, and everything works properly. And he goes, "Well, how could I convince you?" And I said, "Well, it would have to be like the Image deal, but better." And he's like, "Okay." And so like a couple times he contacted me and he was like, we've got a deal that I think, competes. Yeah. And he sent it over and I was like, this is pretty cool. All right. Like I'm willing to give it a chance. I said, I don't know what project I would bring. And then right around that same time, Max and I had started talking about, hey, we should do a creator-owned book together. Yeah. And I sort of was like, maybe this is the outlet. And so I kind of brought like my wish list over to Chip Mosier and I said, here's what I think this book can be. And he was like, all right, we're signed and sealed and delivered. And I just said, oh, like there's no back and forth. He was like, no, man, you've done more than enough books. You know what you're doing. Yeah. If you say like Max's art is amazing, I trust you're going to make the book. So go make the book. And we were like, all right, I guess we're doing it. That is one of the nice things about finally having enough established kind of credits. Yeah. That I no longer have to like, this sounds weird because I feel weird. Like if I'm working with an artist and we're talking about a project and I say, hey, when I was starting off in the industry, it was about, we have to try and get this published and I don't know where or how. And now I kind of go, okay, I don't know exactly where this is going to end up. Probably an Image, but like it'll end up somewhere. Yeah. Like I can place it somewhere. If we put in the work, it'll happen. Do you know what I mean? Which is nice. Yeah, that's awesome. And that is one of awesome. It is one of the weirdest feelings. That point. There's a lot of people trying to get there. Oh, I know. And I try never to take it for granted. Like I never want it to feel like, oh, it's easy, because it's not. And
don't take it for granted, but take it for granted
in the sense that like if I'm working with an artist, there's an artist that I'm working with now on a creator-owned concept, and we were talking about it, and he's been starting to do some artwork, and it looks really good. And I was like, where do you want to see this book? And he goes, what do you mean? I said, like, which publisher do you want me to approach? Yeah. He's like, well, which one can we approach? And I was like, I don't want to be a dick, but like I've literally done work for every major publisher in North America. Like, where do you want to see it?
Yeah, I have people we can talk to.
Yeah, like, and so let's go for your number one choice first.
Yeah.
And then we can scale from there, right? If you want to do it at Image, let's talk to Image. If you want to do it at IDW, Dark Horse, when it was Vertigo, like whatever, those are all possibilities. And that doesn't mean they will all say yes. It just means, we have opportunities to approach, right?
Well, the nice thing is you must have a good understanding of what different publishers will want.
Yeah, and how to approach them, because
Dark Horse,
as much as you might think, pitches aren't one size fits all, right? You have to look at what is a publisher doing in terms of their current publishing lines,
right?
And what kind of books are they attempting to do? It's easy if they're approaching you. So when Chip Mosier says, "Hey, come do a book at Comicsology," I say, "I want to do this book. Yes, let's go," right? Yeah. But it's harder if you're trying to push it uphill and go like, "Hey, I know you weren't expecting me, but I'm contacting you. Here's why I think this is a good fit." You know what I mean? Like, here's what I think is good about it. And then they have to look and go, "Okay, budget, schedule, does this all work for us?"
Yeah. Well, because I look at things and I see like what Dark Horse puts out, or completely different than what Oni Press is going to do.
Sure, exactly. And so when you look at something, you have to go, is this a good Oni book? Is this a Boom book? Is this a, whatever, right? And sometimes that's dependent on schedule, budget, concept, all that stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Sometimes it's about timing. Like, again, I would have taken a creator-owned book with Max probably over to Image, but Chip kind of, was in my, coming right in on my radar and let's do a thing, right?
Yeah.
But it's also a matter of looking and saying, each artist, what is your schedule? What is your availability? And you're trying to sort of put all the pieces in a row. I've had, it's not like everything I pitch is necessarily going to go, golden. I've had a ton of concepts where I've worked with an artist and we've built a thing or we've done samples. Sure. Heck, sometimes we've even been greenlit on let's do it. And then it still falls apart.
Yeah.
Like I think I've got pretty good taste in artists, and I know that because I'll find an artist, write it before they're going to blow up. And then I'm like, okay, we're going to do a creator-owned thing. And then they already get snagged by Marvel or DC. And I'm like, go, and they should take those opportunities because those are great.
It might not come back.
But it was like, we were right on we could have done, and I kind of take it as a feather in my cap. Like, well, I could definitely tell they were there, clearly. Right. Like, and so someone asked me, they said, why was Wayward your second Image book? And I'm like, what do you mean? And they go, you did Skull Kickers and Wayward's so different. And I said, that's the one I got off the ground. And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, do you ever see those old black and white footage of like the airplanes, the experimental airplanes where they're just crashing on the strip?
Oh yeah.
They're trying to launch and the wings blaze off. I'm like, that's the one that got off the ground. Like Wayward wasn't the second book I pitched over at Image. Like it wasn't the second creator-owned book I tried to build.
Right.
God knows how many I did in between Skull Kickers and Wayward. But like Skull Kickers launched in 2010. Wayward came out in 2014. I wasn't sitting on my ass for 4 years. I was pitching stuff. I was trying to get artists. I was trying to put together packages to make this stuff happen. Wayward's the one that got off the runway, So why is it my second book? Because it lived, and so I'd love to say, I have some grandiose, well, I wanted to show my maturity as a writer, and therefore I chose Wayward as my second property because it would exemplify these qualities of me as a creator. It's like, no, man, that's the one that lived. Like it, these other things are
yes on that one.
The other ones are dead in a ditch at the side of the road, and maybe I'll be able to resuscitate them at some future juncture. But when we got the green light to do Wayward, it actually got done. That's why it's my second one at Image, And Glitter Bomb came really fast because I met Jibril Morissette, the artist on Glitter Bomb.
Yeah.
And I knew he was a phenomenal talent and I didn't want him to get poached out from under me. So I was like, rapid fire. Like, this guy's amazing. We got to do a book right now. And within like 4 weeks, we pulled together a pitch and I had it at Image and I got it approved. And the minute I had it approved, I pumped out the first script because I wanted this kid to draw, because I knew the minute people saw his artwork, he was going to get poached otherwise.
Right away.
So.
Dude.
Yeah.
Well, Jim, we've been on for almost an hour already.
Time flies.
It does.
Man. Yeah,
it does. I want to wish you really good luck on Stone Star.
Thank you.
Sell 1 million of them. If you've been listening all the way through, I very much appreciate it. Go out to LCS. If they don't have Stone Star, ask them to order it for you and get it in, because it promises to be a lot of fun.
Thanks, man. Yeah, it's a really, really fun series. It's like colorful action adventure. A lot happens in those 5 issues. It is relentless in its pacing. I'm really proud of it.
All I can think of when you described it, I was like, oh, those old timey circus acts that had their own train,
right? Exactly.
Tracks from small town to small town.
Yep. But now it's galaxy to galaxy and planet to planet.
And I could see people saying, we're traveling through space. Haven't we gotten past the gladiator games yet?
Right. And so it's this fascinating thing of trying to take these recognizable concepts and then give them a fun visual spin. And Max is so good at what he does. His storytelling is immaculate. Espen's one of the best colorists in the industry. We're all having a blast. One of the things I also really like about the book is in the back, I think there's like 14 or 15 pages of development sketches. So you get to see Max's design process, designing the station, designing the locations, designing the characters to really fill out this world. And so there's a thoughtfulness to it that it's the kind of content that I love to see as a creator. I love seeing that development stuff.
Yeah, me too.
And so being able to put that in the just full bore was ideal,
Honestly, that's why I subscribed to Ben Templesmith's Patreon.
Nice.
Because he
get to see all the concept
every month of all the stuff that he's doing to build the story out. And it's just
awesome.
Fun because you see it from the ground.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's really cool.
Nice. Yeah. Peek behind the curtains. Great stuff. I've got a Patreon where it's like an archive of writing. So I have over 250 scripts and dozens of pitches. And so you can go and compare the printed version to the script version and just say, oh, the dialogue changed, or, oh, the pacing changed, or, oh, look at how this stuff,
Is that patreon.com /
Jim Zub. Yeah, it's linked on my website and all that stuff. So for the price of a fancy coffee, you can go through this archive of stuff and you can compare the printed version to the story I pitched. And in some cases, you'll see the similarities, or in some cases, like lockstep. Oh, that's exactly what he pitched. And other times you'll be like, oh, what happened to that secondary character? Like they're just gone. Or what they did in the story has been picked up by someone else. So you get to sort of appreciate the development of these stories, Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's fun.
Well, there you guys go. Go out.
Sweet.
Check out Stone Star. And then check out Jim Zub's Patreon. I didn't even know you had a Patreon.
Yeah, man. Yeah. I've got a bunch of the free tutorials on my main website.
Yeah.
So that's like how to pitch and how to write and all that stuff. But the archive's like the deep dive. So if people want to really, really dig into the nitty gritty of it. Yeah. It's a lot of fun. Cool.
I'll check it out.
Sweet.
Well, Jim, thank you so much, brother.
My pleasure. All right.
Get you back on soon.
Thanks, man. Take care of yourself.
You too. We'll talk soon.
Later.
Bye.
Spaghetti. And we're back.
That's right. We are back. Back in the saddle again. Well, I hope you guys really, really enjoyed that as much as we did making it for you. And if you like what you heard and you want to hear more, you got to go check out spoilerverse.com, because at spoilerverse.com, we have a plethora amazing directors and artists of all walks of life, and editors and writers, and oh my God, are you a lover of comic books like we are? Then there's so many amazing people from the comic book world over at spoilerverse.com, and I highly implore you to go there and check it out.
Yeah, and while you're there, you can check out all the other podcasts on our network, like Originally Geekdoms and Funny Book Forensics and Haphazard Adventures and Nerds from the Crypt and so many more.
Misery
we put out
Point Radio.
episodes all the time. Go check all of them out, and check out all of the reviews and previews and articles we have going up every single day for you, every day on spoilerverse.com for you to check out, to read, and to love, and to like, and to comment. We have a store link. You want to help support the site? You can do it 2 ways. One, go to our Patreon, which is patreon.com/spoilercountry, or go to our store link in the middle of the site there and get a t-shirt, a face mask, a hoodie, something, look fly as hell, and help support the site when you do that, because we get $1 or $2. And, maybe you want to talk to us. If you do, you can do it obviously on all the socials, but if you go to scpod.us/Discord, you can join our public Discord server and come chat with us all day long.
I couldn't say it better myself, dude.
There you go.
You just mouthed out a ton of information at once. And really, I hope you guys enjoy what you're hearing, because we're working our butts off to bring it to you.
We are.
I guess there's only one left thing. Yeah, I'm going to go with it. There's only one left thing left to do.
What's that?
In an oceans of podcasts,
We are Cthulhu.
as Cthulhu compels you to
Open the mind.
and read more.
Do you listen to podcasts that sound like this? Hey, welcome back to the Super OK Podcast, where our audio sounds mediocre.
Or do you prefer podcasts that sound more like this? Crisp, clear, fun, easy to listen to, and full of awesomeness? Well, then you should check out Spoiler Country, hosted exclusively over at spoilerverse.com.